Hello and welcome to India's World. If there is one area where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made the greatest impact in the last 1 year, it is in his foreign policy forays. Today we will discuss the areas where the Prime Minister has broken new ground and areas where he has continued with the policies of the previous governments to preserve India's international interests. Considered as a novice by many in foreign affairs when he took over, Narendra Modi has surprised everyone with the vigour he has brought to foreign policy making. Criticism has not deterred him from making his frequent forays abroad, working non-resident Indian crowds to a frenzy, visiting countries which seem to have fallen off the Indian radar, and from taking steps considered unpopular by the domestic constituencies. To assess the unfolding of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy over the last 1 year, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Lalit Mansingh, a formidable diplomat. He has been Foreign Secretary of India. And besides holding a variety of diplomatic assignments, he's been India's ambassador to the US and the UK also. We have another distinguished diplomat, a former Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Salman Haidar. He was also India's High Commissioner to UK, Ambassador to Egypt, Afghanistan and the United Nations. And we also have with us Mr. Nilotpal Basu, a senior leader of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, a public intellectual and a former member of Parliament. So I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Ambassador Mansingh, let me begin by asking you a very simple question. Do you think Prime Minister Narendra Modi has broken new ground in India's foreign policy making, or has he just brought new energy, new vim and vigor, as it were, to pursuing India's interests as they have always existed?
I think the answer is the latter. He hasn't brought anything significantly new to foreign policy. There is more continuity than change. He has carried on the foreign policies of his predecessors, Dr. Mansingh and Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. But it's true, he has brought in a new vigor, he's brought in greater clarity, and he has pursued it with great personal commitment to the cause of foreign policy. I think every Prime Minister is the de facto foreign minister of the country. But having said that, no other Prime Minister has invested foreign policy with that much of energy or pursued it with that much of dedication as Mr. Modi. And I think he deserves credit for that.
Okay. Ambassador Haidar, do you think Modi's foreign policy is centered around creating a positive environment abroad for India's economic growth? And if that is so, has this not been the main thrust of India's foreign policy since the 1990s?
That is correct. Of course, that has been the main thrust of India's policy. Mr. Modi has brought unusual energy to this operation, and that is the main theme that is repeated again and again in assessing what happened over the last year. There's a sense of renewed energy and a kind of drive which is welcome and is regarded with approval and welcome in India. But I would also add that within this, there is a message also. The message is, I mean, it's not a startlingly new message, but it is the way it is presented, in fact, makes it quite a compelling utterance out of India, that India is now ready, it's open. It is opening out to the world. It is trying to encourage people to come and invest here, make in India, various slogans and policies of that kind have been iterated repeatedly to some effect. And I think that this has helped renew interest in India.
But when was it any different? I mean, with the whole opening up and economic liberalization that took place from 1991 onwards was all about asking people to come and invest in India. Now you call it Make in India, you rebrand it, but it's the same policy, isn't it?
Well, rebranding itself is a kind of policy. It's a way of adding emphasis to something which may not be dramatically new, but which is being projected in a way that makes it look more serious and makes it look more earnest, a higher priority of the government as a whole.
Okay. Mr. Basu, this business of Mr. Modi bringing new energy to India's foreign policy initiatives, why does he bring this new energy? Is it just youth? Is it something personal? Is it that with that kind of energy you can push India's interests better? Does it make for better advocacy? Does it make for new policies? Does it make for more effective protection of India's security and economic interests?
I think I feel little hesitant because my co-panelists are so enlightened in terms of having worked in this area. But even at the risk of being seen as somebody who's uncouth, I really find it difficult to recognize the vigor. I mean, where is the vigor? I mean, you have to first contextualize India in the overall backdrop of what is the world today. For example, in terms of securing India's economic interest. Now, Ambassador Haidar has also mentioned about this Make in India, rebranding. Now, you see, he went to France, for example, one of the visits, and he had dealt with this company, Dassault. Now, there he has opted for buying this Rafale jets from off the shelf. Whereas earlier we were negotiating, a small portion will come directly and some part will be manufactured.
But just because he ordered 36 Rafale jets, you can't say that he's not pushing Make in India.
No.
One example can't sort of go counter to a broad policy.
This, Mr. Bhushan, this sends a contradictory signal. For example, we were all part of the negotiations on TRIPS and the Doha Declaration. Now, we managed to really eke out a very creative patents law, whereby we use the exceptions in the TRIPS clause and the invoking of the public health energies for compulsory licensing. Now, just before he went to United States, he took away those rights, and as a result of that, there was a huge upward revision of some of the life-saving drugs. Now, therefore, I think foreign policy cannot be completely divorced from what you are trying at home. Therefore, the vigor we see, I don't know about the official meetings so much, but at least the public display, the cheerleading by the NRI community there I see, of course, the vigor. And there also, unfortunately, he doesn't show that he is the Prime Minister in charge. He is still in the election campaign mode. I mean, he says, before me there was nothing. He just didn't say that after me the deluge. Now, these are very, very disturbing signals.
We're going to discuss.
I think, therefore, I mean, there is very little homework done on what sort of world, because the world in terms of economic and financial architecture, there are sharp differences, new structures.
So let's hope the Prime Minister is watching and he will do his homework. But let me move on to another question. Master Mansingh, do you think that what really distinguishes Modi's foreign policy today is that it is openly non-doctrinaire, it is non-ideological? So therefore, do you think that this increases the degrees of freedom for Indian foreign policy initiatives?
But that's not very original. I think it was Mr. Vajpayee who started this trend, virtually abandoning non-alignment and going into a select group of countries that matter for India's national interest. So the process of strategic partnership started. What Mr. Modi has brought is a sense of greater clarity. First of all, he has three large objectives in his foreign policy. One is the prosperity of India, the other is the security of India, and the third is the status of India abroad. And he is pursuing that with great vigor as far as we can see. Secondly, he has identified the major regions that are important for India. The neighborhood, Southeast Asia, the Indian Ocean area, East Asia, and select countries like European countries like Germany, France, Britain, and of course the United States, which is now the principal strategic partner.
We're going to discuss all these.
That is the clarity that is brought in. And where I think to refer to a point that Mr. Basu made, where he is linking it with the context of the world, is that in this globalized world, you cannot have foreign policy as an independent exercise. It has to be with the rest of the world. And this is where the connection is being made between the global economy and the Indian economy.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point now. We'll be back again with this interesting discussion in a bit. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing the foreign policy performance of the Modi government in its first year. Ambassador Salman, Haidar, in what specific ways has Prime Minister Modi been able to achieve a breakthrough with the US? What is the significance of saying that now we have done nuclear cooperation with them, or setting up these Pathfinder defense projects, or announcing a US-India joint vision for the Pacific and the Indian Ocean? Wouldn't any government have done the same?
I agree. I don't see a breakthrough in that, but I do see a kind of improvement. When Mr. Modi came to power, relations between us and the USA were in a rather tricky situation. There were various issues that were dividing us. Those have been sorted out. And the very comfortable and exchanges and the relationship that had been developed earlier has been restored. I think that is not something merely to be taken for granted. It requires work and effort. Whether it puts us on a different path, I don't know. But it does mean that that there is a restoration of the equable and mutually beneficial relations with the USA, which are extremely important for our own progress.
And it's been done by a man who should have probably suffered from personal pique at having been denied visa earlier, and he's been able to overcome that. You think that's an achievement?
That is correct, yes. Yeah. I think he's certainly overcome the negatives of that accompanied him into office. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Basu, how do you see Sino-Indian ties emerging under Modi? Has he been able to push India's interests with China? And why is it that after his visit, the Chinese official media said that nothing much had been achieved, while we were saying that, tremendous achievement has been there during this visit?
Before that, just one point on this nuclear liability thing. I think we have made them comfortable because we have reversed our position. The semblance of independence that we had shown, our parliament had shown in actually passing the Nuclear Liability Act has been reversed to the requirements of the nuclear.
Well, the law hasn't been changed. Only an insurance fund has been set up. And what is the harm in making people comfortable if you want their technology?
Because, I mean, all over the world today, the scenario is nuclear industry is languishing because after the Fukushima Daiichi, the insurance industry's risk assessment is such that nuclear power centers are actually not viable.
All right. Okay, so Sino...
on the Sino-Indian thing, you see, we have to watch. We don't know actually what has happened. But I think India should pursue that other issues along with the border question. The border question should not be brought ahead of all other issues. Earlier, there was a tendency. And here also, I think transparency will help. Actually, what happened during 1962, sometimes it actually surprises me. Because now today, nobody talks about two Berlins. I mean, the wall came down in 1989 and it is about 2.5 decades. But something happened 50 years back, but still that haunts. Whenever something happens, those issues come up. So, whatever India's findings were in terms of the Henderson-Bhagat report, we should declassify that and we should look at history with a bit of detachment so that it becomes easier to deal with even...
I don't want to go there. Then you'll have to go into the nature of maps and perception lines and so on and so forth.
No. But what I'm saying in terms of improving our relationship with China internally also, the biggest drag is the hangover of 1962 conflict.
Okay, fair enough. Ambassador Mansingh, do you think that the pursuit of economic interests dictating India's China policy could actually relegate India's security interests to a secondary position? And do you see this happening in terms of the Sino-Pakistan nexus? For example, the China-Pakistan economic corridor, it passes through POK. It took the Foreign Office nearly 3 weeks to react to the Chinese announcement of this huge investment in that corridor. So do you think we are in danger of relegating our security interests to a secondary position when it comes to pursuing our economic interests with China?
Let me make two broad comments on that. Firstly, I think so far as China and Pakistan are concerned, these are not areas of great success for Mr. Modi. And the recent visit to China and the earlier visit of Xi Jinping here don't amount to much of a breakthrough with China. And I think this is where Mr. Modi is facing his big challenge in trying to convince China that cooperation with India is good for both countries. The Chinese haven't responded. And there are several issues of importance to India that have not made much headway, despite Mr. Modi pursuing them. The border issue is one of them, the diversion of the waters of the Brahmaputra, the China-Pakistan nexus, which continues and is a security threat to India, Chinese activities in the Indian Ocean area. So all these are issues on which Mr. Modi had gone with the intention of coming back with something. I'm afraid he hasn't made much headway. This is a lesson to be learned, that you can't persuade China by using soft power, talking about Buddhism and civilization. China is a different country, has to be tackled differently. I think Mr. Modi it's a process of learning for him. Okay. On the economic side, I think it is true that China is the only country in the world that has so much of surplus capital. $4 trillion of foreign exchange savings, which they're putting into various banks and so on. So it's not unnatural for India to assume that if they're looking for a place where their money is safe and is going to give them returns, India is one of the best cases. But here again, I don't think we have made much of a headway.
22 billion or so.
22 billion compared to 35 billion from Japan, but 46 billion from the US. It's quite clear that Chinese have their own priorities. It's $46 billion in Pakistan, but $22 billion, mostly importing Chinese products, so far as India is concerned. So I don't think this is a great success story.
Okay. Quickly, we are running out of time on this segment, but Mr. Salman, Haidar, how about our relationship with Russia? Now, although Modi ensured that the December 2014 summit went off very well in terms of nuclear and defense cooperation, but how significant does Russia remain in Indian foreign policy perspective?
It is extremely significant and will continue to be so. It still our main armorer. That's where our security issues take us in that direction. We have various areas of convergence of policy in Central Asia and other places where we can do a good deal together. So I think that the value of this relationship will remain. It may not have the same prominence as it did some years ago because the world has moved on. We have opened up many other fronts of cooperation worldwide, including very notably with America, which of course means that we have to work harder in any one direction.
But so we may yet see Mr. Modi referring to Putin as my friend Vladimir.
I think that's very likely.
Okay, all right. But we need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Don't go away. Welcome back. We are discussing Prime Minister Modi's performance on the foreign policy front during his first year. Mr. Basu, you wanted to say something before we went on the break.
No. With due apologies to these foreign policy heavyweights, I mean, I would say that with the China, our relationship is very complex, but at the same time, I think there is some element of trust deficit because, you see, the world today is moving unmistakably towards multipolarity. So if you do not give an impression that you are on your own, people will not take you seriously in terms of dealing with you and see shadows falling. And therefore, I think overall about this 1 year and the government and its foreign policy initiatives, you see, again, we should not put all our eggs in the same diplomatic basket. I mean, this is really.
So, which is that basket? Why didn't you name the basket?
I'm saying that the U.S. basket. I mean, there are several questions. What is happening with the government? On the question of Palestine, on the question of Israel, it's not only, I mean, that earlier policy was ideologically driven. I mean, it was a policy because we have huge stakes in the Middle East and so on and so forth. Therefore, what this government has done, and it has done in front of everybody on the floor of the parliament, they refused to discuss the Gaza bombings, and at the same time, the Prime Minister signs the BRIC summit statement. I mean, one doesn't know what it is thinking, what the right hand is doing, and what the left hand is doing.
Okay, Ambassador Haidar, so do you think we're putting some of our eggs in the European basket also? Because after all, there was a successful visit to France, successful in courts for Mr. Basu, but Germany, where India was a partner in the Hanover affair.
The European basket has always been an alternative basket for us to put some of our eggs rather than to go herring after the superpowers and the prominent powers. So I think that relationship has proved itself. And France, for example, we spoke some time ago about the Rafale deal. Whatever one may think of it, it really follows many earlier initiatives when we have made important purchases from France as part of our security apparatus. And, that is an important element in our dealings with Europe and in spreading our interests to those countries which are capable of meeting our interests.
But isn't Europe also our largest trading partner?
A what?
Our largest trading partner?
As a collective.
As a collective.
Yes, as a collective, it would be, yes.
Yeah. Mr. Mansingh, Modi has focused on East Asia through what he calls not look east but act east policy. But do you think in drawing focus to the east, which is very good, he has during this 1 year at least neglected West Asia, Latin America and Africa?
Well, neglect of West Asia, yes. I feel that the government hasn't come out with any kind of strategy on West Asia. And that's going to cost us a lot, because this is going to be the area where turmoil is taking place and our security is going to be affected by what's happening in West Asia. At the same time, I don't think it is at the cost of West Asia that he's got the look east policy.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying during this 1 year, we haven't had a strong signal on West Asia.
Yeah, probably. But the point is, this is also a geopolitical reality, that the center of gravity is shifting from the Euro-Atlantic to the Asia-Pacific. This is where our interests lie, this is where our markets are, this is where the investments are coming from. So I think he's quite right in going to East Asia and Southeast Asia in order to drum up support for our economic requirements. It is also important for our security, which is why he's made the point of reaching out to Australia and Japan, to South Korea, to Vietnam, in order to include them in the network of security for India, just in case.
But Mr. Basu would say that going with Japan and Australia and forming the quadrilateral would actually once again be going with the Americans.
It is giving an impression that, you see, Asia, Pacific, everybody is attaching importance because it's the upcoming area. 60% of global growth is in this area. Therefore, there is a clear-cut approach of containment of China, and you see, that is what I was trying to hint at, that we should stay focused and stay independent and not align this way or that way.
But does that mean that you shouldn't deal with Japan and you should deal with Australia? No, we should
deal with Japan, but you should not become part of any military arrangement. I mean, what the United States is trying.
We are not. We only have a joint strategic vision for the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. That's about it.
I think the American think tank and others are making it abundantly clear what they want of India, and the defense military framework, it is there.
Okay. Now, Ambassador Haidar, do you think Modi's approach to India's immediate neighbours, paying greater attention to them, asserting India's benevolent leadership, as we saw in the case of the Nepal earthquake relief, focusing on Indian Ocean countries, actually sets him apart from the policies of the previous government, which took the neighbourhood for granted and looked only towards Washington?
Well, I think what Mr. Modi has shown to our immediate neighbours is valuable. But I would not say that previous governments have neglected or turned their backs on the immediate neighbours. Far from it. The immediate neighbourhood must always be the first concern of our foreign policy. It's a well-known truism that foreign policy begins at the borders. And now
But in 10 years, Dr. Manmohan Singh didn't make a single trip to Nepal.
Is that the measure?
No, I'm not. That also sends a signal to people. Do you care about this neighbor, or do you take it for granted as your backyard?
Well, I think that the communication between the previous government and the neighbors, whether Nepal or anyone else, was very close. And whether this has to be expressed in terms of personal visits or not, it's a different style of leadership. That certainly was there. I wouldn't fault it for that basis.
Okay. Ambassador Mansingh, do you think Pakistan has been the singular policy failure of Modi? Do you see any coherence in government's Pakistan policy today? You first, you warm up to them first, you invite them for your inauguration, then you shut them out for good reason maybe, and then you don't know what to do because you painted yourself into a corner.
Well, frankly, I'm a bit puzzled with Mr. Modi's Pakistan policy. He came out by offering the hand of friendship, invited all the leaders, established a good rapport with Nawaz Sharif, and so on. Then we saw the abrupt cancellation of Sujata Singh's visit to Pakistan.
No, we all know that. Where do we go from here?
So I'm a little puzzled that the government is not showing any strategy on relations with Pakistan, and no government can afford to do that.
Can I offer a small explanation for this
and there's a
puzzling situation?
Okay, one sentence. Because
that is because the domestic forces which are supporting Mr. Modi have such a position on Pakistan, so it is well nigh impossible for Mr. Modi to come out with a consistent Pakistan policy which can be seen in sync with his overall approach.
Yes, because to say we are not pursuing a dialogue, I mean, how can you not have a dialogue with Pakistan when you have spent so much of energy in dealing with Pakistan in the past?
I personally agree with you, and I think you are simplifying the situation a bit too much, but we've run out of time. I'd like to thank all of you, Mr. Nilotpal, Basu, Ambassador Salman, Haidar, Mr. Lalit, Mansingh, for participating in this discussion. Thank you very much indeed. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching India's World.